Hello everyone. Welcome to your easy guide to English section for CLAT examination series. And we are already in the process of solving previous year question papers now. We have already covered the year 2025 and year 2024 questions. And today we are starting with the previous year question paper solution for 2023. So as we've been doing in the previous lectures, we will be reading comprehension and solving them together. So, as we have established the process that we will first read the questions and then we'll know exactly what to look for in the reading comprehension and then we get to the reading part. And in fact, maybe I have missed this in every reading comprehension, but remember that when you are going to start, just quickly glance at the title of the passage also, because that will give you an idea about what the passage is about. So you'll have some understanding when you start reading. So quickly glance through what the title of the reading comprehension is. It says the provincial reader. Okay, sometimes it's difficult to grasp what it means, but still you must have a look at the title, because if there are four passages, at least for three, or at least worst to worst, at least for two passages, you will be able to understand what the passage is about. It's very rare. For example, for this one, I can understand. It's a little difficult to understand what the passage is going to be about, but still something about some a reader, if not the provincial reader. If you don't understand what a provincial reader is, the reader, somebody who reads. Okay, so this is going to be about a person who reads, something like that. Okay, so you get at least some idea, because otherwise if you are diving into the passage completely unprepared, it will take you some time. It will waste some of your time in trying to understand what we are talking about. So quickly glance at what the title of the of the comprehension is. This will give you some idea. Now let's quickly glance through the questions. What use was the kabadi wala to the author? Okay, kabadi wala is useful also for the author. That's strange. What, according to the author, is essential about the experience of being provincial reader? Okay, so experience of provincial leader, what is essential about it? Why did author feel a sense of epiphany and deep sadness? So we have to look for the word epiphany and deep sadness. We will definitely come across these in the passage. What does the word anachronistic as used in the passage means? So again, we have to look for this word anachronistic in the passage. The moment we come across this, we'll mark this and we'll have our answer somewhere around that. Which among the following options best captures the meaning of the last sentence? At this point, you don't even have to read the sentence, because it actually means that only after you've read the passage will you be able to understand this. So it's better that you don't waste your next few seconds in reading the lines. You can just skip it, because you will have to read the passage and after that you will be solving this. And for the time that you're reading the passage, it will be a little difficult to retain so much information while reading that what the statement was. But just quickly see the few words, so that you come when you come across these lines in the passage, you know this is what I am going to answer. So you will know the whole context and you'll be better able to answer this question later on. So what rescues it? Unpredictability. ठीक है. So when you come across these lines in the passage, you'll know from what rescues to being professionalized. You must read with extra attention so that you're able to solve this question. Okay, just this. Okay, so these were all the questions. Now let's look at the passage. So passage is about provincial reader. So some sort of somebody who reads is being discussed, and we have to now look at the questions. We have to find the points from which we will be able to find our answers. Okay. So I grew up in a small town not far from Kalimpong. In pre-liberalization India, everything arrived late, not just material things but also ideas. So basically, the author, this he or she comes from a small town, and the person is telling that in pre-liberalization. So we know what liberalization year was, 1991, when India opened its economy to the world. We had liberalization, privatization, globalization, reforms. So it is talking that it is saying that before these reforms happened, before Indian economy got integrated with the whole world's economy, things came late in the country. So, and not just things, but also the ideas. And what does the author mean by ideas? Let's see. Magazines, old copies of Reader's Digest and National Geographic arrived late too, after the news had become stale by months or often years. So, by ideas, the author means the magazines or the books. So, basically, ideas in these books would arrive late, because By the time they would reach from some far off country to India, a lot of time had been passed because the supply chain and all those things were not that well established. So that everything would arrive late in India. So all the trends, technologies, and even the ideas in these books would arrive late to the country. Okay. This temporal gap turned journalism into literature, news into legend, and historical events into something akin to plotless stories. Now, see, if you've read the question, you know there is no specific question based on these lines. So, this is full of metaphors. And in the exam, when your mind has to rush through everything and you do not have the time to wait and grasp everything deeply, you don't have to get into exact meaning of each and every word. So you just understand that this is showing that because books and everything's were arriving late, so everything was like, for example, journalism being turned into literature means that now it was not news. News is something that you get to know as soon as that event happens. But literature is like the text that you read, say Shakespeare's text, that would be literature. It is not time dependent. So it is explaining that journalism turned into literature. That means that the urgency of the news would be lost in time because the thing was arriving so late. News into legend. Again, you don't have to get into, we understanding the meaning of it like in very deep manner. You can just understand the fact that it is describing how late the news and everything was coming in the pre-liberalized India. That's all is being described in the line. Since there is no specific question from this, we don't have to engage too much into this. Okay. So basically, that's what is being done in here. Historical events, something akin to plotless stories. So basically, even the historical event, I mean, all the events that were happening, by the time they came, by the time the author got to know about them in his small town, it would be a thing of past. It would become like a plotless stories because not every bit of it would be coming one after the other in a chronological manner. So that's being described. That the like the way now we get news immediately as things happen, we get it through internet, or even the books or magazines, they are very well updated and we keep getting every update. That was not the case in those days. But like those who knew no other life, we accepted this as a norm. So for the author, it didn't matter. It didn't feel like, oh, everything is coming late, so they felt bad about it. No, that was not the case. They were like, okay, this is how it happens. When something happens, it takes time and then it reaches. This is how it is supposed to be. So they were satisfied with the way things were. The dearth of reading material in towns and villages in socialist India is hard to imagine, and it produced two categories of people. So basically, socialist India is again pre-liberalized India, where the economy of Indian economy was not integrated with the global economy. So that is the India that is called socialist India here. Okay. So during those days, there were two category of people because it was so. Getting material to read was so scarce and so difficult. The accessibility was so low that it produced two kinds of people in country. So first, those who stopped reading after school or college, and those including children who read anything they could find. So because the reading material was so scarce, there were two category of people. One who would just give up that there is no reading material, so there is no motivation to read, we won't read. So they give up reading after schools or college. And then other people who were hungry for reading material and they would read anything and everything that they could get. So it was not like they were choosing, I want to read this book or that book like we can do right now. They would read just any reading material they could get their eyes upon. Okay. So I wrote science with enthusiasm that attaches to reading thrillers. When the itinerant kabadiwala, collector of paper, magazines, and rejected things, visited our neighborhood, I rushed to the house where he was doing business. So, because the author belongs to the second category of people who grew overly enthusiastic about reading stuff. So, anything and everything that he could read, the author could read, he would read. Even road science he would read with a lot of excitement because he was hungry to read something. And then the second example that the author is giving, that even the kabadi wala who would collect papers and magazines from different houses would give him so much excitement because he would knew that the kabadi wala would be carrying some old medicines or some news sorry sorry, old magazines and newspapers from different house, and maybe the author can get something from the kabadi wala to read. So it we also have a question on Kabadi Wala, that how was he useful to the author. So at the moment you come across the itinerant Kabadi Wala phrase, your mind should be focused now, that your answer is going to appear in the following line somehow. Okay. So your answer is here. What was the question? What use was Kabadi Wala base speaker to the author? The Kabadi Wala bought up all her magazines. No, the author doesn't have anything to sell. The Kabadiwala's stock of books and magazines were of interest to the author. Okay. The Kabadiwala was about to steal author's magazines. Was not. I mean, there is no such thing that is mentioned here. The author ordered books online, which the Kabadiwala delivered. Of course, there is no online delivery of things. So option B is the correct option. Okay. So we found our option answer here. Okay. He bought things at unimaginably low prices from those who'd stopped having any use of them, and I rummaged through these sacks of old magazines. So basically, as the Kabadiwala does, he would go to various houses, buy magazines and old newspapers at cost cheap prices, and so he would have those reading material. And the author was so eager to read things that he would just go through his sack. Sack is that bori kind of thing that the Kawadiwalas carries. He would just go through his things and find old magazines. Sometimes on days when business was good, he allowed me a couple of copies of Sports World magazine for free. I'd run home and, ignoring my mother's scoldings, plunge right in, consuming news about India's victory in Benson and Hedges Cup. So basically, sometimes when a Kabadiwala would have a lot of magazines and newspaper, he would just let the author have some sports magazine, and the author would be so excited about having those magazines that he would ignore anything and everything, even his mother's scoldings, and would just go through his room and just read those magazines with so much excitement, as if the as like the way we watch T20 live today. So there was so much excitement about those things. While these matches have already happened and the teams have won, but still the excitement was so high in the author's mind that he would ignore anything and everything and would just be consuming the news even if it were late. Okay. Two takeaways from these experiences have marked my understanding of the provincial reader's life. Now we get to know what a provincial reader is. Okay. So again, just sharpen your focus at this point. The sense of belatedness of everything coming late, and desire for pleasure in language. So now at this point, after giving a glimpse of his experience, the author is telling us what a provincial reader is. So at this point, you can imagine that probably the author is himself a provincial reader, and now we know his experience, and now based on his experience, the author is giving us two conclusions about provincial reader's life. That everything reaches to the a sense of belatedness, that is, every information reaches late to this person. And second, the desire for pleasure in language, and the provincial leader really cherishes the language. He or she is really excited about reading anything. So there are two things in the life of provincial leader: or information coming late, and second, irrespective of information coming late, they have a desire for reading. They do not care if the news is coming late or if it is a current event turned into history. They just love reading so much that they will read whatever they can get their hands on. Okay. Speaking of belatedness, the awareness of having been born at the wrong time in history, of inventing things that had already been discovered elsewhere, far away, without our knowledge or cooperation, is a moment of epiphany and deep sadness. I remember a professor's choked voice narrating to me all the arguments he'd made in his doctoral dissertation, written over many, many years of hard work. For there indeed was a time when PhDs were written over decades and had suddenly come to naught after he discovered the works of C.W.E. Bixby. So basically, he's saying that while it is only if it were only limited to reading, it was not a problem. But sometimes when you only have limited information, you think you're trying to make sense of the world based on that limited information. You do not know a lot of things have already been discovered, and you think you've thought of those things for the first time. So an author is giving the example of a PhD of professor also, who had done a lot of work, who had worked really hard on his PhD dissertation, but his work was based on the information that was already late, that reached very late to him, and the person was not adept with the new information. So his dissertation was, of course, based on old pieces of information, and that is why his dissertation, in which he felt that he's talking about some new things, he's bringing out some new insights, but those things already existed in the world. It's just that he had not read about them, because everything comes late to the country. So he was, when he got exposed to that information, then he got to know that the things that he thought he has originally thought of them, they were already existing in the world. So his hard work, his dissertation that he had written over years, became dated, or anachronistic. Okay, anachronistic, we do not know the meaning of it. It became, oh, I mean, not very relevant, because those things have already been talked about long back. It's not something new that you're doing. That's what you're supposed to do in your PhD. You're supposed to find some new observations, some new insights based on the already existing knowledge. But when you do not know the updated version of already existing knowledge, you cannot get the best insights, of course. So the author, when he got to know about the work, the professor, when he got to know about the work of CWE Bixby, he realized that the so-called new insights that this person has found in his dissertations have already been written by this great scholar. Okay. This, I realized as I grew older, was one of the characteristics of provincial life. That they, usually males, were saying tried things with confidence of someone declaring them for the first time. I therefore grew up surrounded by would be Newtons who claimed to have discovered gravity again. So, the author is now saying that, because, say, if you do not know how updated the world is, you will think that, okay, I have thought of this new concept for the first time and I am the discoverer. But someone has already discovered that long back, because they have the access to updated information and they've already reached that point. So, in the provincial reader, somebody who's living in a small town and gets access to information and ideas at a very delayed in a very delayed manner, thinks that that information is only up to this point, and based on these ideas I am building something new. But actually the knowledge set has already been updated with so many new things, and someone else has already thought about those things. So would be Newtons here means that somebody thinks that they have discovered gravity just now, but gravity has already been discovered, and so much work has been done on the equations of gravity, which you do not know. You'll get to know about couple of years. By then the knowledge base would have increased so much. So that's what the author is lamenting. The author is feeling bad about it, that you think you've read everything on a subject and you have thought of something new, but the subject has already progressed so much which you do not know about. So what your new discovery is already old in the updated or a fast developing knowledge world, which is far 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 away from the provincial reader who is living in a small town and gets access to those magazines when they're not current, but they have become history. Okay. There's a deep sense of tragedy attending this sort of thing. The sad embarrassment of always arriving late after the party is over. So basically, a lot of times you think you know so much and you go somewhere with a lot of confidence that, okay, I have something to say, but then you get to know that people know so much more, because they have access to the information, and then you feel like you're always arriving late to a party. For example, like you are always the last one to know about things, because you're getting all the knowledge with a lot of delay. What rescues it is the unpredictability of these anachronistic discoveries, the randomness and haphazardness involved in mapping connections among thoughts and ideas in a way that hasn't been professionalized. So, in these lines, you have two questions. First, what does anachronistic means? And also, these lines, there's a question which asks you to tell what these lines means. Okay, so from here you can see what does the word anachronistic discoveries means. So there's a sense that anachronistic is something that is not relevant anymore. So unpredictability of these anachronistic discoveries. What are anachronistic discoveries? These ideas that author or the provincial readers are discovering with a delay. So anachronistic is something that is not relevant anymore, old fashioned kind of thing. Okay, so that's your anachronistic. And the last line, the unpredictability of these anachronistic discoveries, the randomness and haphazardness involved. So basically, the magazines, the information that are coming, they're not coming in a very structured and chronological manner. So they are coming in a very different manner, and for the provincial reader, they make sense of those things from their own original and fresh perspective. So there can be two ways of accessing information. One is you read something and I tell you this is how it is supposed to be. So you're getting that information from my perception, from a very structured manner, and so your understanding will be based on how the my understanding is, or how the established understanding it is. Your originality will not be there in understanding that matter. But if I were just giving you, say, 4 5 facts and so many things in a very haphazard manner, not in a proper structured chronological manner, you will try to understand that thing from your own fresh and original perspective. So that's what the author is saying, that while there are many disadvantages of these anachronistic or late information, there is one advantage also, that the person, the provincial reader who's reading this delayed information, they try to understand things from their own fresh original perspective, okay, rather than just understanding them from already established ways of understanding, okay. So that's one good thing about the originality or the freshness in thinking about the provincial reader, okay. I hope you've understood what this passage is about. Now let's try to solve the question. So we already did this one, but we'll quickly go through this again. What use was the kabadiwala or the waste picker to the author? The kabadiwala's stocks of books and magazines were of interest to the author. What, according to the author, is essential about the experience of being a provincial reader? Belatedness in the sense of coming late for everything. Okay, this sounds fair. B, over eagerness. Okay. Accepting a temporal gap between what was current in the wider world and the time at which these arrived in the provincial location. So C is the most apt answer, because for provincial reader that was the norm. So this is the most apt, essential, because the question says what is essential about the experience. So belatedness in the sense of coming late for everything is one of the features that can be. Over eagerness can also be one of the features, but essential, the like core of being a provincial leader, is accepting the temporal gap means the time gap between what was current in the wider world and the time at which these arrived in the provincial location. So you do, for example, the author who was reading sports magazine knew that these matches happened long back and these teams won long back, and by the time this information is coming reaching to this person, this thing is a old news, it's not even a news anymore. Maybe many more matches have already happened, many more cups have already been won. So this acceptance was already there in the provincial leaders, that okay, this is how it happens, the things they cannot they cannot reach the news immediately, so they have to wait. So that was already an accepted fact for a provincial reader. So that is the most essential thing about the experience of being a provincial reader. So here you have to pay attention to the word essential, because A and B can be confusing, but C is the most essential thing. Okay. Why did the author feel a sense of epiphany and deep sadness? So epiphany is self-discovery kind of thing. That's something that you think, that you discover. Okay. Epiphany. So, why did the author feel a sense of epiphany? Because the things that felt special and unique to the author were already established and accepted, thought in the wider world. Okay. B, because the author was less well read than others. So, that was never an issue with the author, because everybody was equally well read or not well read in that small town. Because the author missed being in a big city, there is no such longingness that we come across in the author. So option A sounds the best. Because the things that felt special and unique to the author were already established and accepted through thought in the wider world. Okay. So that was the cause of deep sadness. Because suppose you read something today and you think, okay, now I know what gravity is. Wow, this is a new thing in the market. But then you get to know that, oh, that was discovered long back and now they have built satellites based on this. And here you are just dancing about gravity. So it gives you some sort of like sadness, that why like you feel stupid, that are where the world is and where I am. So that is something that gives you, that you discover this also, that okay, I am not the most updated one in this world and people know so much more. And that gives you this is the discovery, and this also gives you sadness. What does the word anachronistic as used in the passage mean? It means connected with another time, or like not relevant in the present time. So rooted in not non-urban setting, no. Related to Mufassal area, there is no such Mufassal area mentioned in the passage, so you can completely eliminate this option. Opposed to prevailing sensibilities, no, not at all. Connected with another time. So we see that this is the consistent theme in the passage, that there is a temporal gap, there is a time lag between the information that when it is produced in the global world and the information when it reaches to a provincial reader. So connected with another time is something that if you understand the essence of the passage, you will be able to reach this option. Which of the following options captures the meaning of the last sentence best? What rescues it is the unpredictability of these anachronistic discoveries, the randomness and the haphazardness involved in the mapping connections among thoughts and ideas in a way that hasn't been professionalized. Something being professionalized means that it has been established and you are following that established rule. So, if you're not doing something coming in random and haphazard manner can be a little confusing, but then you make sense of those things from your own original perspective. So, this is what is being described in these lines, that though the author feels dated, though the author feels outdated or old fashioned in her access to intellectual ideas, her lack of metropolitan sophistication lets her engage with the ideas with some originality. So, basically, nobody is teaching her how to look at things. She is developing her own perspective from a fresh and original point of view. So in this way her mind is develops the ability to make sense of things from a very original perspective rather than just being spoon fed or looking for someone to teach her. So this really develops the faculties of her mind in a very good manner also. This is one advantage of things coming late in a random and haphazard manner. Okay, this is what these lines are saying. So this was this our first reading comprehension. Now let's get to the second one. Again, now the step one, we'll quickly glance at the title. What the title is: Excerpts from The Dig by Soumya Ashok 52. Okay, so the dig, some sort of digging is going to happen in this passage. Okay, fine. We get some 2%, 3% idea about the passage that there is going to be some sort of digging or some excavation in the passage. But okay, maybe you cannot reach the excavation, just digging. Somebody is going to dig something. First question: what was the assumption about the origin of urban life in India before Kiladi dig? Kiladi dig. So here you can get some idea that there is going to be some information around excavations. Kiladi dig, assumption about origin of. So if there is digging and assumptions about origin, that means excavations are going to be the theme of this passage. So the first question is, what is the assumption about origin of urban life? So the moment we come across that, we'll know. The Kiladi excavation further challenged the idea of single fountainhead of Indian life. Now, this is given in quotes. That means you will find these exact line in the passage. So you can maybe remember the word fountainhead, and you can just remember fountainhead from your from this question. The moment you come across this, you'll know this line has been asked in the question, and we can solve the question right at that point. Language, including a script similar to Brahmi script, emerged in Kiladi in the 6th century BCE. Which of the following is the most convincing conclusion from this statement? So, Brahmi script or language, something of that sort, if you come across, you'll know your question is from that part, and the answer should also be around that. BCE acronym. So, if you know this is a very general knowledge based question, you can solve it right at this point. What is BCE, before the Common Era? You must have come across this in your history. A farmer could write his own name on a pot he owned. The fight going on in here is, you are not the one to teach me to write. I have learnt it myself. These sentences imply, again, it's in the code, so you'll know that you'll come across this exact line in the passage. So you have to be mindful. A farmer, pot, something like that. The moment you come across these lines, you will know your question is in this part and you will try to solve that. Okay. Now we have some idea. This is a passage about some excavation, and we have to look for these couple of keywords that we have read in the question, and we'll find our answers and we will be able to deal with this passage. Okay. Now let's start the passage. Until the Kiladi site was discovered, archaeologists by and large believed that Gangetic plains in the north urbanized significantly earlier than Tamil Nadu. So basically, this is going to be about an excavation at Kiladi, which is a site discovered by archaeologists. And before this discovery was done, the archaeologists used to believe that Gangetic plains in the north, that is in the UP Bihar, present day UP Bihar area, that those are the Gangetic plains. They are urbanized earlier than Tamil Nadu. Okay, so probably the Kiladi site is in Tamil Nadu. So now that we have found this site in Tamil Nadu, it is before the site was formed, it was felt that the urbanization began in northern Gangetic plains. Historians have often claimed that large-scale town life in India first developed in the greater Magad region of the Gangetic plain. So Greater Magad region is again present day Bihar. So the historians believe that before the large scale town life happened, before the urbanization of the greater parts of India happened, it the urbanization or the existence of well-developed towns began in the Magad or the present-day Bihar region of the Gangetic Plains. This was during the second urbanization phase. The first urbanization phase refers to the rise of Harappan or Indus Valley civilization. So basically, this urbanization in Magad region was the second urbanization phase. The first was, the phase even before the Magad region urbanization began, was Indus Valley civilization. So Indus Valley civilization came first, which is in the northwestern part of India and in the bordering areas of in the Pakistan. So around that point, that was the first phase of urbanization when very sophisticated towns and all were developed. And then the second phase of urbanization happened when the kingdom of Magad was established. So that was the second phase of urbanization. So this is what historians have believed. So this was the established knowledge before the Kiladi site was discovered. Okay, and we are going to talk about Kiladi site being discovered in this passage. The findings at Kiladi push that date back significantly. Sorry, I think I've missed one line. Yeah. Tamil Nadu was thought to have urbanized at this scale only by the 3rd century BC. So so basically the established knowledge was that urbanization began in North India, first in the Harappan civilization, second in the Magad, that is present day Bihar, and the urbanization in the southern part of India, that is Tamil Nadu, began much later, only by 3rd century BC. That BC is before Common Era. The findings at Kiladi push that date back significantly. So basically, now that the archaeologists have found some new discoveries, they've discovered things at Kiladi. It shows that that's not really true, and the whatever has been found here, it pushes the date back. That is, the 3rd century BC is not when the urbanization started, maybe way before 3rd century BC. So it pushes the date back significantly. Based on linguistics and continuity in cultural legacies, connections between Indus Valley Civilization or IVC and old Tamil Nadu traditions have long been suggested, but concrete archaeological evidences remained absent. So basically, there have been speculations or guesses being made about a connection between Indus Valley civilization and Tamil Nadu Tamil traditions, but there haven't been any concrete evidences to establish those connections. So nobody could have said that Tamil Nadu culture is also as old as Indus Valley civilization culture. Okay. Evidence indicated similarities between graffiti found in Kiladi and symbols associated with the IVC. So now in the Kiladi, there have been some graffitis or some artwork on the walls or something of that sort has been found in Kiladi by the archaeologists, and there have been found some symbols in the Kiladi site that have some association with the Indus Valley civilization. So it gives some level of evidence to establish connection between Kiladi site in Tamil Nadu and Indus Valley civilization in the northwest part of India. It bolstered the arguments of dissidents from the dominant North Indian imagination, who have argued for years that their ancestors existed contemporaneously with the IVC. So basically, we are seeing that the established knowledge said that the development of the cities and everything and the urbanization began uh, at an earlier stage in the northern part of India, while in Tamil Nadu or in the southern part of India, it began much late. But we see that there have been some graffitis and evidences found that establish that there was a connection between Kaladi and Tamil Nadu culture, and this connection would establish the fact that even the Tamil Nadu or the southern India culture also was developing at the same time as the Indus Valley civilization. So this is what contemporaneously means. And the dissidents in the dominant North Indian imaginations are the one who believed that even the southern Indian culture developed at the same time as Indus Valley civilization culture was developing. So it's not while the established belief is that Tamil Nadu culture was developing at a later stage, but that's not the case. There are some dissidents who believe that both the cultures were developing contemporaneously, that is at the same time. All the archaeologists I spoke to said it was too soon to make definitive links between the Kiladi site and the Indus Valley civilization. There is no doubt, however, that the discovery at Kiladi has changed the paradigm. So while the evidences are still not very concrete, but these are early evidences and they are showing some sort of connection. So it cannot be said with the most assured manner. There are no definitive links, but still some links are being established, and it is giving some hope that some more evidences can be found and this link can be established. And if this link is established, that will be a paradigm shift, that is a major shift, because the dominant knowledge is in a very different manner, and it will completely challenge the established belief of the North Indian archaeologists. In the recent years, the results of any new research on early India have invited keen political interest, because proponents of Hindu nationalism support the notion of Vedic culture as fundamental to the origins of Indian civilization. So basically, any research, research has not been free from political influence. That's what the author is saying, that uh, if there is any new research insight, for example, the Kiladi insight has been found, it has invited political interest. For example, people of Hindu nationalism who believe that whole India is under the fundamental origins from Vedic culture, that is, Vedic culture originated in the northern part of India. So, Hindu nationalists, according to the author, believe that the whole India developed under the umbrella of Vedic culture, starting in the North India and then spreading in the other parts. So, this is what the established belief has been, and any other insight that tries to challenge this belief is seen invites political interest. So, they, from a political point of view, they try to challenge it. So, this is what the author is saying. The Kiladi excavations further challenge the idea of a single fountainhead of Indian life. So the moment you come across the word fountainhead, you know there's a question from this part. So you should remember what the question is saying. The Kilad, the Kiradi excavation further challenged the idea of a single fountainhead of Indian life. So fountainhead is means the origin. So what Kiladi excavations are doing is they are challenging that there is only one origin of Indian life, that that the Indian life originated in the North India and then it later on spread to the southern parts of India. That is being challenged by Kiladi excavations. They indicate the possibility that the earliest identity that can recognizably be considered Indian might not have originated in North India. This wasn't all. In subsequent seasons of the Kiladi dig, archaeologists discovered that Tamili, a variant of the Brahmi script used for writing inscriptions in the early iterations of the Tamil language, could be dated back to the 6th century BCE, likely 100 years before previously thought. So now the author is presenting the insights from Kiladi excavations that are challenging the established knowledge that the fountainhead or the origin of Indian culture is in the North India, and from there it spread to the southern parts, as if this is the dominant, the only culture, only the mother culture of the whole India, and all others are developing out of it, branching out of it. That's not what the case is. That's what the Kiladi excavations are showing. Okay. So, there has also been found a Brahmi script, written inscription in the Kiladi excavation site, that shows that the language was not used for the first time. Uh, the language could be dated back to the 6th century BC. So it is hundreds of years before it is assumed that the language was first used. So according to the established system where the North Indian culture is supposed to develop further and spread to the South India, it shows it was based on the fact that the language came much later. But now Kiladi excavations are showing that it is the language, the Tamil language, the Brahmi script was found, and it was found dated to 6th century BC, which is much earlier than what the archaeologists are believing before the Kiladi excavation site was found. Okay. So not only had urban life thrived in Tamil lands, but people who lived there had developed their own script. The evolution of writing is attributed to Ashoka's edicts, but 2600 years ago, writing was prevalent in Kiladi. Mathan Karupia, a proud Madurai local, told me. So while it was supposed, while the dominant belief is that the evolution of writing or the beginning of the writing started from Ashoka's edicts, again, which is located in the northern part of India in the Gangetic Plains, but the Kiladi excavation site, the Brahmi script founded here, shows that it was 2600 years ago prevalent in Kiladi, even like before the the Ashokan edicts were found. So that means that the writing established in a very independent manner. Sorry. So the writing started in a very independent manner in the Tamil Nadu region. So it was not like that it started in northern part and came to India. There was its own independent linguistic culture developing in Tamil Nadu. This is what the Kiladi site is telling us. So, what does the proud Madurai local farmer is telling the author? A farmer could write his own name on a pot he owned. The fight going on here is you are not the one to teach me to write, I have learnt it myself. So again, there is a question from this part. So the moment you come across these lines, you should know that there are question based on this part because you've read it. So you have to sharpen your focus what these lines are saying. So what these lines are saying that a farmer could write his own name on the pot he owned. That means the literacy was so widespread in the region that even a farmer was literate enough to write his own name. And the fight going on here is you're not the one to teach me. So that means the fight going on in this whole passage is that it's not the North Indians who taught the South Indians. I have learned it myself. So the South Indians, they developed their own language, their own independent linguistic culture. Their own language was there way before the Ashokan edicts came in. And it's not because the Ashokan edicts developed language and they taught the South Indians. They had their own independent culture and they learned it themselves. That's what these lines are saying. Okay. I hope you've understood the passage. Now let's look at the questions. What was the assumption about the origin of urban life in India before the Kiladi dig? So, A, the origin lay in the northern Gangetic plains, which urbanized earlier than the south. Okay. The Indus Valley civilization was the first urban civilization of India. The second urbanization was known to be in Magad Empire. So, what was it is talking that what was the assumption? So, option B, while is correct based on the fact given in the passage, but that's the fact. That was not the origin of assumption about origin. The assumption about origin is the option A, the origins lay in the northern Gangetic plains, which urbanized earlier than south. This was the assumption about the origin. So, option A is the correct option. Question 7. The Kiladi excavation further challenged the idea of a single fountainhead of origin life. So, we know what the single fountainhead idea is, that there is one single origin that is in the northern India, and from northern India, everything spread to the rest of the India. That is one single fountainhead of Indian life. So, this is being questioned by the Kiladi excavation. So, what does this mean? It means that the Kiladi archaeological dig proved that Indian urban and modern life emerged independently in several historical periods and geographies, and no one theory is enough to explain it. Okay, so because we find the independent existence and development of culture in the Tamil Nadu region, that shows that in many different periods, in many different geographies, independent cultures were developing, and there is no single fountainhead of Indian life. That is, there is no single point of origin, point of geography of the Indian way of life. That is what the Kiladi excavations are telling us. Okay. Language, including a script similar to the Brahmi script, emerged in Kiladi in the 6th century BC. Which of the following is the most convincing conclusion from this statement? Kiladi is a center of culture and learning far superior to any other in ancient India. There is no talk about superiority of the Kiladi culture. People of Kiladi were illiterate and could not use language to inscribe on their pots and pans. No, we saw that even a farmer could write his or her name on the pot. Ancient India, ancient urban history of India as we know it today could significantly be altered by findings of the advances achieved by the Kiladi civilization. So this is your answer. That ancient, because we come across these lines that inscriptions in the early iterations of Tamil language could be dated back to the 6th century BC, and the evolution of writing is attributed to Ashoka's edicts, but 2600 years ago, writing was prevalent in Kiladi. Okay, so option C. This we did while reading the question itself. BCE is before the Common Era. Now the 10th question. A farmer could write down his own name on the pot he owned. The fight going on here is you are not the one to teach me to write. I have learnt it myself. This statement implies, we've already done this, that the Kiladi civilization did not conserve the access to education and literacy only for the elite. So somebody like a farmer was also literate enough to write his or her name. So this is what is being implied in these lines, that the literacy was widespread in the Tamil Nadu region. Okay. So I think we can put this video to an end at this point. We can call it a day, and for the rest, we will come back with another video and we'll solve rest of the questions or the passages in that. I hope you've understood. You're developing a sense of process of how we go about reading the passage. We first look at the title, so we know what the passage is about. Then we read the questions, so we know what we have to look for in the passage, and then we solve the questions. We mark all the points where we find the answers so that if there is a confusion, we can quickly get back to that specific area and find our answers. These are simple steps that we are using in solving the questions. I hope you are also doing it simultaneously, and I hope this process of solving reading comprehension is gradually easing up for you. Okay, thank you so much for your patience. I'll see you again with the rest of the passages. Bye bye.